Too hot for TV.
Welcome back to Doctor Who, Too Hot for TV. We are the podcast that looks at all things Doctor Who Extended Universe. Now you may hear there's a certain ambience. We're outside, we're in a pub, and I'm joined for the first time in real life by a regular around here. It's Michael Mills. Michael, how are you?
We're going down the pub. Hello, Dylan. Hey! It's Chat Doctor Who.
Lads. Yeah, so I brought you to the best pub in London.
The Broccoli Barge.
Yes, we're in a Wetherspoons. I've not been here before, but they're usually pretty quiet, so I thought what a perfect place to start and record a podcast.
No music and a cheap pint. What more do two miserable men want?
Exactly. So what are we here to be miserable about today?
We are here to be miserable about... Last time I was on, maybe not last time, last year I was on for our series, we talked about the Doctor Who book oeuvre of Mick Lewis, known for its violence, its darkness and its horror.
Yes.
And having released this, some people said to us on social media, "Oh, you haven't done Nekromanteia? Because that's also violent and dark and miserable." And we said, no, we haven't.
Yes, but we're going to change that today. So without further ado, Nekromanteia was recorded on the 18th and the 19th of December 2002 at the Moat Studios. It was released in February 2003. It was written by Austen Atkinson, directed by John Ainsworth, and produced by Jason Hay-Ellery and Gary Russell. News at the time: Doctor Who was voted the greatest sci-fi character of all time by readers of SFX.
Fine.
I mean, what a surprise. A British sci-fi magazine does a vote.
Arnold Rimmer, number 2.
Doctor Who is about to undergo some changes because the 40th anniversary is approaching. A Big Finish announced the Doctor Who Unbound series. Elsewhere, Doctor Who Warsmith at the Theatre Royal Portsmouth from November 2002 was reviewed. Now, we've covered a stage play, and we may cover a stage play in the future, but it's those fan ones, especially when they're original content, that I'm like, I wish, fuck a time machine that's going to take me back to find Marco Polo or something like that, or see a long dead relative. I want to be at the Theatre Royal, November 2002, to see Warsmith.
JFK will remain dead, but we will have a video recording of this lost Doctor Who epic.
Exactly. One day. Other releases at the time. Dalek War Chapter 2 was first released by Big Finish. So was Jubilee. From BBV, we have the Faction Paradox audio, Sabbath Day. On DVD, we have The Seeds of Death. And from BBC Books, we have The Domino Effect, featuring the 8th Doctor, Fitz and Angie, and the comic strip was Oblivion. Fantastic times. Remember any of those?
Oh, Oblivion is fantastic.
I don't think I've ever read this.
Oblivion is...
Oh, no, it's the comic strip, yes. Yeah. Which one is it?
It's the one that is the final Izzy story that rounds out her story where she and Destry swap bodies back. And Russell T Davies wrote a letter to Doctor Who magazine before back, congratulating them on the gay kiss.
Yeah, and they had one complaint, which was someone saying they would never buying it again because two women kissed.
Yeah.
Fantastic time. No, I do remember that. It was a wonderful time to be a Doctor Who fan when those comic strips were running. They were just the best thing in the world.
I mean, we were all sat there thinking, like, Doctor Who's dead, it's never coming back. We were still months away from being told it was coming back. But you had Jubilee, you had Oblivion going. I mean, okay, the Domino Effect wasn't great, but it was broadly a good time for the Doctor Who novels as well. Doctor Who Unbound around the corner.
I know. The Seeds of Death for the 15th time on home media. What more do you want?
First time I had it on home media, on a double DVD, no less.
Oh, yeah, that was exciting, wasn't it? But there wasn't a lot of content on the early double DVDs. Like, because they re-released The Seeds of Death with loads of extras. But I think we might have got a making of
Yeah, there was a big commentary.
Yeah. Was it at the time when they got the hosts in at that point, or was it?
No, it was still before.
Yeah, when it was just Fraser Hines goes wild.
That was the name of one of the features on the second disc, actually.
Of course it was, and it's going to be removed from all future Blu-ray releases.
Too hot for TV.
The Doctor, Peri and Eremen arrive in the Garazone system, where the Temple of Shara is being attacked by a fleet of corporate ships, but the witches there slaughter and eat the attackers. The witches are preparing for the other and raise a holy relic in preparation, which is actually an energy converter that gives the witches their power. The Doctor enters the temple to confront the cult as he is horrified by the readings he's getting, which suggest a massive temple disturbance that needs to be stabilised. The witches ignore his warnings and sever his head from his body and feed on his flesh. The energy required by the converter is so huge that it is causing a temporal breach. When it collapses, the witches realise they need to bring the Doctor back to life to stabilise it. However, the corporate army destroy the source of power by mistake, which they have been after all this time. With the planet falling apart, someone needs to take the relic's place. Eremen intends to do this, believing it to be her destiny. However, her cat, who contains the spirit of Shara, the man who created the energy converter, takes her place.
Too hot for TV.
Nekromanteia. Have you heard this before?
I have heard it once about 2 years ago. Weirdly, for the longest time, it was the only one of the first 50 Big Finish releases that I hadn't heard. I just didn't pick it up at the time. There never seemed anything remarkable enough about it to go back to, even if it was £2 on the Big Finish website.
Or free on Spotify if you're that way inclined.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
I heard it when it came out. I don't particularly remember it. And then around 2013, I did a big Finish listen through, and I heard it then. And I remember it being uncomfortable, but not in the way... I don't think I picked up on the uncomfortable things that we're going to talk about later. I just remember it being quite an uncomfortable world. But I don't remember whether I thought it was good or bad, but I can picture where I was when I heard it that second time and go, oh, this is a bit different. But over the years, it's got this controversial reputation.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Why is that? Well, same thing with you. The reason I went back to it was because suddenly started seeing references to it on places like Twitter. People going, oh yeah, Nekromanteia,
Yeah.
You know, what a misstep. Let's all forget that whatever happens. I think, why? And the reason is because, well, first of all, it's a very dark story. So it's very dark fantasy. I think Blake 7 often gets mentioned by people who think all things are like Blake 7, but they might
only have 2 reference points in Blake 7.
Yeah, that's what they call a wider influence. It has a lot of the sort of grim 80s miserableism of British sci-fi. There's a lot of that going on.
This is like Eric Saywood Plus, isn't it?
It's Eric Saywood Plus. Yeah, it's full of corporate board meetings where people stab each other in the back and they put profits before people, and it's a bit Caves of Androzani, but even more so.
Which is the template for the downfall of Doctor Who.
Which is exactly. Which is, without Caves of Androzani, there would be no Vengeance on Varos.
Yeah.
And the Doctor just wandering... Mind Warp. The Doctor just wandering through stories where terrible things happen, and then people thank him for making everything better at the end.
You were fantastic, Doctor. Really, everybody's dead. But actually, this planet's in a worse place than it was beforehand.
And I'm not sure you actually did anything.
No, apart from really traumatise your mate. But nobody gets traumatised here, do they?
Well,
they do. So there are many controversial elements to it, and I think its big reputation isn't quite as true as people think it is, because I think it's had this reputation on Twitter and other places of being the Big Finish story where a companion gets sexually assaulted.
Yeah,
that's not quite true. There is a conversation where somebody attacks Eremen, and she says she fought him off, and he wanted to do a lot worse. Now, I think the implication is clear there.
Yeah.
And I just don't think in that day and age, or this day and age, that doesn't need to be part of Doctor Who. Doctor Who goes to very dark places. I know there's things in the 60s, but, different times. By this point, It's not. I'm not even blaming the writer, although obviously he came up with it, but the producers of this should have known better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people should have said, because one of the weird things about this, comparing it to the Mick Lewis books, which came out, so Mick Lewis books came out in 2001, 2002, this is 2003, so they're very similar era. But there is something about putting this into literally having people perform it, having Peter Davison reading it, having Nicola Bryant there. It does make you aware of actually how, for want of a better word, inappropriate it feels within the context of Doctor Who to be trying to address any of these issues. And I think it's particularly problematic where, as you say, that is one scene.
Yeah.
But in some ways, I don't know the fact that it's just one scene makes it better, because it sort of raises this really serious issue, and then just kind of doesn't really address it.
It dismisses it, and nobody really goes, "Are you all right? Like, how do you feel about that?" And it's because I think it's because RMM is a Leela type figure. That we go, she can deal with anything. It's okay. She's a warrior queen essentially. Yeah. But it is just thrown in. It's so throwaway. Like, I'm not sure Doctor Who should ever do a story about sexual assault, but you would hope if they did, it would be handled in a very nuanced way. To have it as a throwaway reference. And sure, those Mick Lewis books touch on some very dark areas, but like you say, there's something about it being on the written page and going, this is a certain version of Doctor Who that will never happen on TV, and that's Rax or Combat Rock. Yeah. And then there's this, which is those people saying it. And it's sat alongside
Bang Bang a Boom.
Bang Bang a Boom, exactly, was like 3 CDs ago or something like that. It is uncomfortable, and I went into it sort of going, open mind. I want to see what. And I don't hate this story at all, but it is the most uncomfortable Doctor Who's made me feel for a long time. And I read Combat Rock.
I think there's also something about in those books. We spoke to Mick, and it was clear from speaking to him that he was very aware of the extremity of the actors that he was discussing and their real world, their position and place in the real world. So for all that they are difficult and in many ways horrible, it does feel like the entirety of the book is given over to addressing those ideas, especially in Combat Rock. Yeah. There was actually, I found an old interview with Austen Atkinson, the writer of Nekromanteia, on BBCi. And it's just worth reading a bit of it, because he does, without directly referring to that scene, he does sort of address it a bit.
Okay.
And he says, I'm slightly cutting it down, it's quite a long quote, but he says, "It's a terrible thing that happens to RMM, but she doesn't react as a 20th century woman would react. As I wrote it, she has a measurable Olympian detachment herself. I dare say, in dark moments in subsequent stories, she'll, off-camera, have nightmares about it. It was a very dark thing, but she bears it with fortitude. It was interesting to write that, as opposed to Perry, who has a young girl from America who is probably quite cosseted." I don't know that makes it better.
You know when people say there are certain experiences that only certain people should write about?
Yeah.
This is, and people fly off the handle about it and go, you can't censor art. But this is a prime example of why perhaps, I'm assuming a straight white man, or at the very least a man, perhaps shouldn't be writing about an attempted sexual assault. And it is attempted, but that doesn't make it any the less more traumatic,
No, and indeed, and that idea of it, because this was only the third RMM story. You had Eye of the Scorpion, Church of the Crown, and then Nekromanteia. And if you're going to have a companion who is from that far in the distant past, the idea of how their societal attitudes different to the things they encounter is not a bad place to go with it. But there are more advisable ways to address that.
It was supposed to be the second one. This is supposed to be a first story after after Eye of the Scorpion, but they had script problems with it, and so Gary Russell rewrote a lot of the dialogue. Again, I don't know why he didn't. I don't know why Gary Russell, who is a sensible, clever man, and Jason Haig-Ellery, who also seems like a sensible, clever man, didn't go, this is not. It doesn't distract or add to the story in any way if you lose that scene.
No, and indeed, in some ways, its inessentialness to the story makes it worse.
Yeah,
that exactly. It's just there. I mean, maybe it's part of the time. I think we're all sort of becoming ever more appreciative of this idea of, certainly those of us can remember as well, of that weird period in the 90s into the noughties of when everyone sort of thought we'd got over problems about sexism and misogyny and racism. And now you look back at so many films and TV series at that time, and they're horribly racist. They're horribly misogynistic in different ways.
It's from the era of comedians saying the most controversial thing because they want to get a rise out of him because, again, we all think it's solved.
Yeah.
And Quentin Tarantino dropping N-bombs whenever he plays a white character in a film and things like that he writes for himself, and it's like, oh, everything's sorted. Tony Blair came in and society was fine. And then, it belittles, I think, and the potential implications of an attack like that.
Yeah, 100%. It's that mentality that because we're aware of the problem, that means there's no longer any problem.
Yeah,
which is very problematic. And I completely understand why so many people have taken against this story because, and it is one scene. Yeah, I do understand why that one scene will cause you to write off the rest of it.
Is there anything more you want to say on this point before we look at the rest of it? Just because I want to try and give the story a fair airing outside of the more controversial elements.
No, other than, although there is that one side, there is more broadly I think, one of the things that makes it uncomfortable as well is that as well as the violence elsewhere, which I'm sure we'll get onto, there is actually a kind of, especially those come from a male writer, a certain earliness in other elements of the story, which kind of, as a context of this as well, make you feel even more.
We get a naked Perry, don't we?
We get a naked Perry, and because this is early Big Finish, it's still, there's a lot of say what you see going on, and so we get a naked Perry, and we get a male character spying on her and narrating to the audience. Hopefully, the hollow image will show this young woman being bathed in oils. She is very young. She is clearly very delicate and drugged. Yeah. And at this stage, I'm thinking, I'm just listening to the train. I'm thinking, I feel bad.
The character of Perry is what, 19, 20, something like that? It's like, I think, especially as Doctor Who fans, because at this point, Nicola Bryant, I imagine, is in her 40s. We sort of go, oh, well, you know, it's Nicola Bryant who's in her 40s, but she's playing a 19-year-old. And I don't think there's anything wrong with showing a world where people are that vile. But I don't know whether you need scenes like that or scenes like we've just discussed to do that.
Well, I seem to recall as well, there's a bit in Big Finish, The Inside Story, which I wasn't able to dig out more copy of this, but I remember there's a bit in that talking about Nekromanteia where they say something like, the sounds of Perry in the bath are actually the sounds the sound designer doing is washing up. Quote, I dare you to enjoy that scene ever again.
I just keep coming back to, I don't know why it wasn't edited. It's a less enlightening time and we're not talking that long ago, but also these are the things that script editors and producers should be thinking about, like, why are we telling this story in this way?
Yeah, 100%.
Regardless of the controversies, how do we feel the script works, doesn't work? Like, are we a fan of this script? If you could separate those things as a competent script, does it get you from A to B in the right direction? Where are we at with it?
So I like that aside, and certainly in the first episode, I liked some of the world it was beginning to evoke, which is this mixture of that E07, as we said, that sort of miserabilist, very British sci-fi where everything's just kept getting worse for the next 600 years.
Is miserabilist like minimalist? Is it a genre that we're creating now?
Everything just descends into being, everything is just crap in this world. You know, it's a world in which people say things like, initialize vocoder and then open a channel.
Like, God bless Russell T Davies for saving sci-fi from that sort of thing. That's all I'll say.
100%. But they kind of offset it as well with this dark, witchy, sort of dark fantasy vibe that's going on. And those two things actually sit kind of interestingly opposite each other. This sort of all things, it actually reminds me a bit of Death Comes to Time at moments in the early stages. It's
the magic versus sci-fi things, elements of Death Comes to Time, elements of Battlefield in that respect. And it's like, I love it when those things clash in Doctor Who. We're getting a lot of that at the moment, and I'm not sure it's working the way I would want it to work. But I really love the whole, science being indistinguishable from magic. And this play really delves into that. And, I found lots to enjoy within the world it was creating. Yeah. Despite the many flaws.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because there's a lot of big sci-fi ideas established very early on. Like you have these witch cults that are sacrificing people to the furtherance of some god or possibly machine, both of them. It's kind of it almost feels a little bit like some of what you were getting in the recent Dune movies at times. It's that sort of scale of thinking.
Yeah.
That I really enjoyed that certainly set up. In fact, not just that, there is quite a bit of Dune in this as well. You get these kind of corporate board meetings, which are a little bit Eric Sayward.
Yeah.
But they're kind of offset by this corporation and they've run for so long they've sort of become rituals and almost like churches in and of themselves. It's kind of like James Herbert done as a kind of corporate satire at times. The first episode I enjoyed.
Yeah, there's a real amount of world building here for me. And we're in the Garazone system. We're going to the bazaar with the.
What's the tune? What's the tune?
My favourite song, and it's like all of a sudden, Big Finish of this era feels like a cohesive universe.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, of course, this is somewhere the Doctor reads again and again and again at different times, and there are. I love the sort of, you say June, and also like the 2000 AD-ness of like this market, this world that is full of traders and weird people coming and going, and like one week it could be a bunch of people hunting Cybermen, and the next week it could be this witch cult and stuff like that. There's lots of things I love about Eric Sayward's Doctor Who. It is flawed to buggery is the way I describe it, but that era has a certain tone, and I feel this is like we're trying to do it as a 90s blockbuster almost, and it's very evocative of that. Doesn't quite work, but I'm here for sort of the world it inhabits.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, interested in 90s blockbuster. 2003, obviously, decades on.
Doctor Who's always a little bit behind.
This is very late 90s Doctor Who as well. If Lost in Space 1998 was what we were showing the kids, it makes sense that this is what the adults would be getting.
Absolutely. Removing those elements, I'm sort of enjoying it. Like I definitely went in episode 1 going, this is going to be good. Episode 2, things start to go a bit worse. Weirdly, by episode 4, it sort of brought me back a little bit, and I was like, okay, the resolution's a bit sort of like, I'm not entirely sure what's going on, but there was something again about the music, the direction, stuff like that, where I was like, I think I'm really enjoying this.
There's definitely bits. I think at the beginning and the end, you can get a sense of the shape of what he wanted, what everyone wanted to do with this story. Space opera, grim, and it does bring back some of that grimness in the end as well in the resolution. For me, it does get a bit lost in technobabble, and almost in a manner that I almost thought, oh, this is anticipating the big finish of the 2020s here. That we're all just going to go, oh no, the Enterocitor has exploded. Well, thank you, Doctor.
How do we feel about, as you mentioned earlier, it's Eremen's third story. Does she sit well in this world? Is she settled into the times? Because obviously, Nick Briggs said the reason he got rid of Eremen is that he was uncomfortable with a white woman playing this role.
Yeah.
And I think that probably adds to the list of issues with this story.
Yeah.
But I think we can all agree that's an issue.
Yeah.
And put that to one side. Does Eremen work with this Doctor, with this companion in this situation?
At the start, no. And I think that's because neither Perry nor Eremen is written terribly well at the start of this. There's a lot of really tiresome sort of sub-legally blonde Valley Girl shtick. There's an exchange between Eremen and Perry that's, what is this face pack you talk about? Is it a religious experience? Oh, definitely. I think, was it always like this, Dylan? No. Was it always like this? They always talk in these ways.
That's what women sounded like in 2003. It's a fact.
I mean, as it goes on, so we had that quote from Austen Atkinson about wanting to interrogate how Eremen would have different views towards things. As discussed, I think in the most notable way, it's very poorly judged. But actually, it sort of approaches that idea in a more advisable way in the final part of the story. So there's the character, the archaeologist character, the one who listeners will recall was perving on Perry earlier on. In the final episode, he basically meets his end at the hands of the witch cult.
Yeah.
And
he gets his tongue cut out.
He gets his tongue cut out, and his possibly his eyes as well, and generally killed in horrible ways. But there's this thing where Perry just, he's like, what the hell is going on here? This is awful. This is terrible. Eremen agrees that what's happening is terrible, but also believes it's justified because she's from ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
Well, this is a terrible punishment, but he committed a terrible crime in defiling their sacred rituals.
Yeah.
And that actually, I thought, if that was what you'd done with that idea, that was all of it, I could see that being a really interesting way of taking Eremen forward and making a virtue out of having a character who, as they said about Katerina, doesn't know what a light switch is.
Yeah. I think you're right. That was the scene that stuck out for me. And I don't think they go there in many of the other audios, but I would love to revisit some of them and just to see how she reacts to those things, because it is. I don't think if you were to do it on TV now, I think you'd probably do it mid-season for 2 or 3 stories and go, this is somebody from the past travelling. I don't think you get but at that moment, again, in the last episode, while these horrible things are going on, I'm there going, oh, of course this is how they utilise this character. And then obviously the sort of Deus Ex Catacomb. Just thought that, didn't even write it down. The plot resolution is Eremen's cat.
Can I just say, Eremen's cat, who throughout sounds suspiciously like someone saying meow.
Yes, I'm not convinced they could afford to pay for the library CD of cat sounds.
They couldn't afford to pay for a cat.
It's Gary Russell. Let's talk a bit about the violence, because we did Mick Lewis's stuff, which it's full of violence. And here there are some very nasty moments. Are they handled well? Do you want to hear them on audio?
The cliffhanger to part 2 is the witches rip the Doctor's head off and then eat his flesh.
Yeah.
I repeat that. The witches rip Peter Davison's Doctor Who's head off and then eat his celery-coated flesh.
And if you were going to do it to any Doctor, that is the most shocking one, I think.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Tom Baker, it's probably just a rough Saturday, particularly rough Saturday night, right? But I think, and there's no like get out of that. Like that's actually happened to him. It is, it's better than. Oh my God, it's the Daleks as a cliffhanger. Right?
It's a fantastic cliffhanger, but also I'm there going, again, bang bang a boom. I know that Gary Russell was very keen on, I want to do all these different types of Doctor Who. Really and this is an experimental year. Yeah. It's the 40th anniversary, and they are doing Unbound and Jubilee and Bang Bang Boom and this. But it's like, I don't mind the violence there. I think, although it's uncomfortable, I think I'm fine with it being there because it's pre-2005 and post-1989.
Yeah.
There's something about that. I'm okay with them experimenting with the violence, but I can absolutely see why somebody would put this on now and go, I don't want my Doctor Who to do that.
Yeah, it was written and produced at a time when there wasn't really any such thing as a casual Doctor Who fan.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. If you're getting involved, you know what you're doing. And it is like the Mick Lewis story. I think this is at heart a horror story.
Yeah.
It's sci-fi horror. I think I put money on Austen Atkinson having Event Horizon at least rented on video.
No, he had the X-rental copy and was watching it again and again and again.
And and with horror is meant, horror trades in taboo. If there isn't any discussion of bad taste at all, you've probably got an argument about is it actually horror? That's not an excuse for anything, of course.
Yeah.
You have to know where the boundary is, and I think you have to play on that boundary rather than going beyond it. The violence in and of itself, I think, probably does just about dance about on it. And I think if we're doing, we're going to do that version of Doctor Who, fine. An experiment says that's fine, and it doesn't. It feels like, well, Doctor Who's always tried to be scary, so if we're making it for adults, this is a horrific thing. So I like you. I didn't. That form of the violence I didn't have such a problem with. And it is it's just odd in some ways now to remember there was a time when you could do that.
Yeah.
Performed Doctor Who with, because again, it's one thing when this is a book that you pick up in Watersons, it's another when the Doctor's head gets ripped off and then it goes
when it's a book, it's one person's weird interpretation of the show that's trying to do something weird and different. When, if you suddenly heard Patrick Troughton saying the lines in kind of
100%, yes,
Combat Rock, you'd be like, oh no.
Or even more so if it was Michael Troughton going,
yeah. Now, this was originally written for the Fifth Doctor and Nyssa, which would have been even worse somehow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. So I don't know. Again, I think maybe it's just that bringing it closer to what was on television just emphasises how out of keeping this is with
Absolutely.
TV.
And what do we think of the Fifth Doctor and Perry's characterisation here? You mentioned Perry being a little off at the start.
Yeah.
But for me, the Fifth Doctor seems to work. Like, he's about the right sort of Doctor for it, but Perry does seem off to it.
Perry does seem very off. I think, again, it's that, I don't want to keep coming back to it, but it is a very of its time idea that the way in which we will give... So, Perry was quite sexualised on TV, and... repeatedly, and that's problematic in its own way as well. But it feels like there's this very 90s, early noughties idea that the way that you address that is to have female characters kind of sexualise themselves.
Yeah.
Which I would say is different to making characters who are, sexually confident, sexually controlling themselves.
Yeah.
Grace Holloway in the TV movie is a sexually active woman in her 30s. She doesn't feel the need to say things like, I was born with trouble tattooed on my ass.
No, she wasn't. Although, maybe that was an deleted scene.
If she'd come back for if they commissioned the full series.
Peter Davison is the one that comes across to me as the most sort of standard character here, and the one that really is like, he could be in the Church of the Crown. He could be in Phantasmagoria. But also... from that side of things, it's almost slightly more disturbing that he's reacting the same to this more visceral, dirty world, I think.
Yeah, that's an issue as well, isn't it? Because, again, just to compare and contrast with Combat Rock, the characters are very aware in Combat Rock, but especially Victoria is very aware that she's seeing stuff that is not what generally happens when they they land in Zen Monastery or something like that. Here, the story itself seems unaware that it's doing things unusually, which it should be.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think if the Doctor was like, this isn't the sort of adventure we normally... Not quite in those words, but like...
This is a bit unusual.
Yeah. It's a very dark and dirty and dismal world. And our characters find themselves in. But what we haven't really mentioned is like the threat here, the villains, because it doesn't feel like... I mean, everyone's an arsehole in this world, which is very 80s Doctor Who.
Yes.
So what do we think about the various threats that they face in terms of the characters we've got, and indeed the witches and things like that?
Yeah, the witches I like, because they're a bit unusual.
Yeah.
Especially at this point, it felt like Doctor Who hadn't really gone into the dark fantasy side and that much as it could have done.
Yeah.
I like them, and I like the way their threat is carried through in this.
I wonder at the time, and I might have created this memory, but I think when I did my second listen X amount of years later, I was quite struck by the witches of like just how horrendous they are in many ways and how unlike Doctor Who it was at that point.
Yeah, so I like that because it was quite different. I think there's also the sort of corporate threat, isn't there, from the Imperial Solar Corporation.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, and that's fairly standard.
Yeah.
Oh, not just fairly standard Doctor Who, that's fairly standard I've seen Alien.
Yeah.
Corporate stuff about... Turns out big corporations don't care about us people, you know.
What?
What?
That's not the message I got from Oxygen and Kablam.
And I don't know that it does. Like I say, apart from that idea of making it a little bit in the first episode, a little bit Frank Herbert-y, and these are corporations that have existed forever. That was interesting, but beyond that, it doesn't really go anywhere. And you get bounty hunters who are out for themselves. And blah 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 blah.
Yeah, it's a very generic sci-fi world, but again, and very generic sci-fi threats on that side of things. But because perhaps I haven't seen Doctor Who in this world for a while, coming to it this time, I was a bit like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for these people, and I'm ready for this threat, and I'm ready for this role. It's got a very big cast, actually.
Yeah, it does.
And we have a couple of Doctor Who alumni from TV. We've got Simon Williams showing up. He doesn't show up until about halfway through, does he?
He doesn't turn up to part 3. So, and actually, this is possibly the single best thing the story does, is as mentioned, the cliffhanger to part 2 is the Doctor getting his head ripped off and his body eaten, just to re-emphasise that. Part 3 begins with him waking up on the edge of a cricket field with Simon Williams. And that's a brilliant bit of classic Doctor Who, if in doubt, dissonance.
Yeah. Way before Stephen Moffat was doing it.
It would be but that is, you're right, I hadn't considered that is very Stephen Moffat's start of part 2, isn't it?
It's just, I don't know how to get him out of this, so let's not.
Yeah, it's always nice to hear Simon Williams, isn't it? He's one of those people like Michael Jason or Trevor Martin, where you think, well, do you know, we're quite lucky Doctor Who got them on TV because they've got brilliant voices for audio.
Yeah. It almost took me out of it for a second. I was like, oh, it's Chunky Gilmore. But then I was pulled back in.
Because you have no wider frame of reference.
Well, exactly. I believe he was in other things.
It's him from Upstairs Downstairs, come on.
I don't really remember Upstairs Downstairs.
I only remember when it came back with Keeley Hawes.
Ah, right.
Tense.
I see. Yeah, so that's a bit of cult. With my cult TV, to be honest, unless sci-fi or the occasional, like, really good drama like Our Friends in the North, I'm just not going to watch loads of drama from the 60s and 70s. Like, because it turns out they're still making drama now, and some of that's quite good as well.
I'm not going to watch Sorry, no matter how many times you tell me to.
And I've got the Sandbaggers, but I don't know why I bought it, because I'm never going to watch it. But Nick Briggs says it's good.
There we go.
And he is the barometer of taste that we should all measure ourselves by. We also get Rom Dutt. That's not his real name. Rom Dutt is from the Power of Kroll. He's the person that nearly rapes Ehrman. Which makes it worse. Because he was a nasty gun runner in that.
Yeah, and I just think, again, the dissonance of all of this, right? It just, what was the thought process that led to any of this? We're going to get these people in, and that's the story we're going to tell. I mean, I don't know. It's worth mentioning. This is one of only 2 scripts that Austen Atkinson ever wrote for Big Finish. The other one being a Tomorrow People script. I think he did it about the same time. So
outside of Big Finish, I can find a lot of sort of academic and historical things that are attributed to him. I don't know whether it's the same one. But he does also direct the 2 animated episodes of The Reign of Terror.
Oh, there you go.
So he does go back to the Doctor Who universe and also does something that's largely panned by people. Apparently Peter Davison said, I don't want this guy writing for my Doctor again. Do you think that's fair?
I mean, I've heard that story. I've never been able to... It seems to... Whenever someone does a page or a discontinuity or something on this, that fact, I've never been able to find the source of that.
Davison apparently said there was a writer, or Big Finish said there was a writer, but Davison said, I don't want to write for my Doctor again. And then fans did the math.
Oh, I see, okay.
And I can completely see why they ended up here, because Davison's had some drivel, but, I mean, I can completely see why this was the story. He was like, fuck this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's the case, but it would make sense, and I can, if it were, and regardless of that, I can sort of see why maybe they didn't feel the need to return to this well with it.
Do you think you have to do much to this script to turn it into something a little bit more acceptable?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if you lost the attempted sexual assault scene to start, if you lost some of the more general sexist attitudes in, I think it would be not inoffensive to still have a huge amount of violence. But, you know, The Dark Flame came out the same year, right? And I could see it very much ending up in the same kind of orbit as that.
Which makes me think this needed a lot of work. It got pushed down the schedule. They needed to redraft. Gary Russell did some rewrites. How bad was the first version? Like, and by bad, I don't mean shit script. I mean, how un-Doctor Who or how controversial was the first version, do we think?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? And you can imagine that some of this might have gone over, because some of the, you know, regardless of the scene that we discussed a few times now, even within the violence, the way that violence often appears in the script, it's not like, again, just to use Nick Lewis's stuff as a reference point here, that violence in Combat Rock is fairly consistent throughout. You're in a violent horror story throughout Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah.
Here, it's sort of being Eric Saywood, really incredibly violent scene. Eric Saywood. You know, this is in between people having their tongues torn out or their heads taken off. People have lines like, "Oh my God, the cloaked ship has been destroyed and we are in the path of oncoming debris." I cannot get across to you just how dead the reading of that is by the actress.
Yeah, like there's a point where you can hear actors giving up their hopes of being actors when they're reading dialogue like that.
This was 2003. Doctor Who was nowhere near television. Thinking, what has happened? I'm spending my weekend reading this dialogue.
Is there any other members of the cast that stick out? Because it's a big cast.
It's a
Now
quite big cast.
we're used to having like eight people tops, and this has got the best part of like 14, 15 people in it. And they're not doubling up, most of them. Like a couple are, but
It's sort of wonder how they made the budget work for it, apart from anything else.
I wonder whether at that point were they like bringing in people and getting them to record bits for one story and bits for another. I wonder if you then looked at the dark slate whether some of these smaller roles were being played by the same multiple people.
Yeah, I mean that would make sense, and I wonder if the limiting the cast became as much as anything that when you're dealing with an audio medium, you literally don't have people's faces to remind you who they are, or in a book where you literally have the name written down to distinguish them. Maybe it's a practical thing. You can only keep 6, 7 voices in your head at any one point, right?
So, in Doctor Who's 14th anniversary year, they're doing a lot of experimental stuff. Do you think this deserved a slot in terms of an experimental version of the show?
Pitched on paper, dark, horror-influenced space opera. Yes, I think if that's one of the things we're going to try and do in the experimental year, fine. I think, and I wonder how it happened, but it went so beyond the realms of acceptable bad taste, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I messaged you, and I said, I'm quite enjoying this, and there was so much of it, especially in the atmosphere, the music, the grim nature of it, that I was like, I'm behind this, I wanted to succeed, but it doesn't stick its landing.
No.
It has a very saggy middle. But I wanted this version of Doctor Who to go on for a little bit, and it just couldn't. It couldn't quite nail it in the way that I think Mick Lewis possibly does in his books, in a very different way. So it's an interesting experiment, but I think perhaps it might even have worked better as part of the Unbound range or something like that, where you've gone, this is not only an actor you've not heard play the Doctor, but he exists in a world where bad things happen, and we need to explore those bad things as well. But perhaps not as part of the main range with the guy who was in Fall to Doomsday.
Not with him from All Creatures Great and Small.
Do you have anything else you want to say on Nekromanteia?
Perry wants to find a man with a body to die for.
She does, yeah.
Apparently, that's what they were tempting Nicola Bryant back to the microphone with. I think the moment where I realised it was going south was the line, "He's not terribly keen on humanoid females." Again, any man who refers to women as females, big warning sign.
Humanoid too, to be fair.
Humanoids. I should be an oxapod. Oh.
So, we must rate it then if you have nothing else to say. This is a clanger, a banger, or an average meander.
Oh, I mean, it's a clanger, isn't it? It's a thundering clanger in the end.
I'm going to surprise you here and go, it's a... No, it's not. I'm going to give it an average meander. It's to the lowest end of it, but I can't quite make it clang because there were parts of it that I quite enjoyed. Like, I enjoyed it more than a lot of the things I've said clanged, because it's an interesting, flawed take on Doctor Who that I got something out of. I don't think I'll ever listen to it again, but
no need.
Absolutely no need. But I was there for the ride, basically, in a way that I'm not often on this. But I will admit, fundamentally, I don't think this is fantastic, but it was just the take that did it for me.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think, and I do get that, and I think there was a lot of here that I would like to have liked more than I liked. But I'm sorry, I'm on the side with the Gen Zers who just can't figure it. But it's worst excesses.
It's worst excesses. I will also say I don't think they should be there.
No.
But it's this weird experiment that I'm perhaps giving a little bit more time to than I would do normally.
Too hot for TV.
So, what's the next thing we're going to cover?
Well, we're going to leap forward 10 years from the 40th anniversary to the 50th. Peter Davison is still spending his weekends with Big Finish. We're going to talk about Doctor Who, 1963, Fanfare for the Common Men.
There's a whole lot of colons there. Think of that what you will. This was released on the 11th of September 2013, recorded on the 18th and 19th of March 2013, written by Eddie Robson, directed by Barnaby Edwards, and produced by David Richardson. News at the time, shoot was underway on Matt Smith's final episode as the Doctor. Doctor Who magazine sales were up 17%, something I imagine hasn't happened for a while. There was a lost interview with William Hartnell, where it turns out he was a bigger cunt off the screen than he was on the screen, and 9 million people tuned in to the reveal of Peter Capaldi as the Doctor. Glory days.
Glory days. What a time to be alive.
I know. I don't have much to say on that news, except it happened. I remember it well. Remember it all.
I remember cutting my Saturday afternoon out in London in the sunshine short to rush home and find out who the new Doctor Who was going to be.
And it was the guy all the papers said
it was. The guy we thought it was going to be, yeah, absolutely.
Hang on, was that wasn't the Lawrence Fox time? Not Lawrence Fox, Chris Marshall time, was it? No, that was the Jodie time it was going to be Chris Marshall.
Yes, I think you're right.
We all thought it was going to be.
Because that was when he just finished Death in Paradise.
Yeah.
And everyone was like,
Just like when Paxton Joseph was nearly killed at the end of Survivor Series 1 because he was going to be the Matt Smith Doctor. Although, as was revealed by Den from On the Time Lash, something that was long since rumoured and happened in the papers, but he's got family friends who are friends with the Kinnear family. Is it Roy that's still about, or is Roy his dad?
Roy Kinnear was his dad. Rory Kinnear
Rory is the son. Yeah. So at the time, the papers were going, "Is Peter Capaldi?" And then one of them went, "No, it's Rory Kinnear." And basically, Ben was told by a member of his family that he turned it down. So I think they went to Rory Kinnear first, and Ben went to Peter Capaldi.
I mean, whenever, you'll know this working in film and television, whenever they say they were our only choice,
yeah,
they were not. They were not.
Because there's always a long list of people they'd love to do it.
Yeah.
The people who are actually willing to do the audition.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, we could get this person. Oh, they're not free that week. We need them to start that week. See also Matt Smith and whoever the black actor was that was cast that apparently wasn't Patterson Joseph.
Okay. Well, I mean, also Rory Kinnear was in the James Bond films at that point.
Yeah.
Playing Bill Tanner, had just been in Skyfall, so presumably, which was, huge hit, the only James Bond film to ever make over $1 billion. So presumably didn't feel the need to go and be Doctor Who.
Absolutely. And he didn't want to be on lunchboxes, probably.
But also, this was also a time that, fair play to him, Ben Daniels gave a very open and honest interview. Was it the following year, going, I was the second choice. If Peter Capaldi had said no, it was my part, and Peter Capaldi was never going to say no. So,
I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, it must be. Those stories always come out, but it'll take longer with the new series. I feel like them to come out, but eventually we go, oh no, like how they had one actor. And then Ncuti Gatwa came in on the last day and stole the audition. I bet they had multiple actors.
Well, what I want to know is, when will we find out? Did you watch Georgia Tennant's video diary that she released on Instagram when the specials were out with David Tennant last year? And she released some behind-the-scenes, just jokey interviews she'd filmed with David Tennant while they were filming it. And he was talking about, what's the plan for us? They said, well, they're going to announce... And then it gets bleeped out.
Whether it's actually who I think it was.
Well, as the Doctor, and they bleep out who it was he said it was. And then in the subsequent one, he was like, oh no, it was actually Ncuti Gatwa. So who was it he thought?
I've been told it was James McAvoy that they had down as, Disney Plus. James McAvoy wants to do it. And then there was scheduling issues. But obviously you go, it wasn't scheduling issues, this guy was better than this guy. But weirdly, I mean, maybe it wasn't written at the time, but I can't see a James McAvoy Doctor in any of those stories. Maybe I'm just used to Ncuti Gatwa's normal guy energy. But
oh, shush you.
Anyway, so releases at the time. From Audio Go, we had Destiny of the Doctors, Night of the Whisper, featuring the Ninth Doctor. For Big Finish, we had Daleks Amongst Us with the Seventh Doctor and Klein, the Companion Chronicle, Upstairs, featuring the First Doctor, Stephen and Vicky, The Lost Story, The Dark Planet, featuring the First Doctor, Ian, Barbara and Vicky, and the 6th series of Jago and Lightfoot. Bookwise, we had About Time 7, published by Mad Norwegian Press, and we had The Doctor, His Lives and Times. Don't know what that is. Comic strip was Tickletown, featuring 11 Doctor and Clara, sure everyone remember that. Scream of the Schalke was released on DVD, and It's all quiz. There was a thing called the Monster Collection released by BBC DVD.
Yes.
Now,
DVD?
on DVD, yes. That's what it says, digital versatile disc.
I take back my yes, I don't know what Dylan's talking about.
Now, this was something for fans of the new series.
Yep.
To give them a taste of the old series.
Oh.
And so it had 2 episodes, one from the old, one from the new, for the Cybermen, Davros, Silurians, Sontarans, Daleks, and the Master. So I'm going to ask you now, can you guess which 2 stories they picked? So 1 classic, 1 new. The Cybermen.
For the Cybermen. New. 2013. I'll say new.
People can't see what you're
People can't see what I'm doing, and just as well. Unfortunately, the people at the pub can. Rise of the Cybermen.
correct.
Thank you.
And
That was the easy part.
Classic.
Classic. Oh, it's going to be Earthshock.
Unfortunately not. You get 1 other go.
Which ones are missing? Revenge of the Cybermen.
No, it was 2 minute Cybermen.
Oh, of course it was.
Davros. I mean, there's only, at this point, 1 choice. For me.
It's just on Earth.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
And then what's the other one?
Genesis of the Daleks.
Of course, yeah.
Of course it is.
Then the Silurians. Can you guess what's
Is it The Hungry Earth?
It is. And what classic story could they possibly choose?
Was it the Ambassadors of Death?
Yes, it was. It was, yes. No, of course it was Doctor Who and the Silurians. Sontarans.
Sontaran Stratagem.
Yeah.
The Time Warrior.
Excellent. The Daleks. Now, this is a tricky one.
This is a hard one. Okay, so
Because we've already had Genesis.
Genesis. So, new series, I'm going to say Evolution of the Daleks.
No.
Oh, bollocks.
One more go.
One more go. Dalek.
No. It was Asylum of the Daleks.
Of course. Of course it was.
It's the best one.
Why would you start with that?
And then the classic
The
series.
classic one, I'm going to say it was Death to the Daleks.
No, one more guess.
Remembrance to the Daleks.
No, it was the Daleks. That's a lackluster box set if ever there was one, wasn't it? And finally, the Master.
The Master. So, new series, Sound of Drums.
No.
Really?
No.
Death in Heaven. No, Hamza. No, think about Hamza.
If you think about it, there's only
End
one.
of Time.
Yeah. And then the classic series.
Classic series. Terror of the Autumn.
It was. Oh, so you didn't do. I didn't keep a point system, but you didn't do too
This
badly.
isn't Strictly Come Hamster.
I think you won.
Thank you, brilliant.
And so yeah, there were loads of other releases you've probably forgotten after that quiz.
The Doctor, His Life and Times.
Don't know what that is.
That was quite good. That was a sort of coffee table book where it was sort of semi-fictional, semi-factual, and the idea was that as you flipped through, it was lots of collated documents from in-universe that sort of told that. But it arranged chronologically to sort of tell the history of Doctor Who up to that point. But it would be things like, unit reports, or it'd be a letter from Arthur Conan Doyle to Madame Vastra about the thanking him for telling her. There was even one of Winston Churchill writing to his friend Sidney about his encounters with the Doctor, with his friend the Doctor.
Okay, I'm in. Yeah, I'm getting that.
It was great fun. I bought it in the library.
There I was about to slack it off. Turns out it was great.
Too hot for TV.
The Doctor and Nyssa arrive in 1963 to watch the Beatles, but instead they are presented with the Common Men. After a botched assassination attempt, Nyssa is matter-transmitted with the assassin. Nyssa ends up embroiled in the lives of the Common Men earlier in their careers, while the Doctor meets them in the present day. The two explore the lives of the Common Men at various times in their lives, until they realise that Lenny Kruger, their manager, is an alien who kidnapped 3 children from his planet, the Common Men, and replace the Beatles with them. His plan is to use the power of Common Men mania to gain infinite power. With the timeline spiralling out of control, the Doctor manipulates it further, so Lenny will die within a day. The Doctor then gets Lenny to surrender, as the Doctor is the only person who can undo the timeline and put history back on track, thus saving Lenny's life.
Too hot for TV.
But elsewhere, Doctor Who was back in 1963 and was sort of having an encounter with the Beatles, which would never be done again in Doctor Who.
It never happened.
Obviously, we've had The Devil's Cord recently, which is why this came up. Yep, we'll get into the comparisons of The Devil's Cord later. This was an episode I quite liked. But Why has it taken this long for the Doctor Who? Because almost the things you think of if you're a nerd, admittedly, of the 60s are the Beatles, Beatlemania, and Dalekmania. Although I don't think Dalekmania was quite as big as people.
As far as Doctor Who fans are concerned,
It
they
was.
were exactly the
Like
same
there was
level.
loads of screaming girls outside of the television centre every time.
Roy Skelton couldn't go out on the streets.
Terry Nation was mobbed everywhere he went. Why has it taken so long to bring these two cultural icons together?
Legalities.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. You can't feature real living people in things without getting into a lot of trouble or paying a lot of money.
Yeah, but they do appear in this.
But they don't. So, I mean, just for a start point, this is an incredibly clever, both from a storytelling and also from a, I guess, likeness rights point of view, premise for a storyline, which is a fantastic first scene. This is a pre-title sequence. The Doctor takes Nyssa back to 1963 to see the Beatles, the height of Beatlemania. The crowds are there screaming, waiting for their band to come out. The boys come out, and it's a different band.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's amazing.
Do you prefer that to I Had a Dog or whatever it's called?
Well, I would say that Fanfare for the Common Man has more to say about the Beatles than The Devil's Chord, insofar as it has something to say other than the Beatles were good at music.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what does it have to say about the Beatles? The Beatles? Do you know
Some of these things you put the Beatles.
Weirdly, I was doing a hamster on 42 the other day, and they referred to the Beatles as the Beatles, and that just slipped out of my mouth.
Mavity.
Right, exactly. I am the Chibnall Stan. So, how does it treat the Beatles?
It treats the Beatles with an incredibly clever way. So what this conceit allows them to do, so the idea is the whole mystery is the Beatles have disappeared from history. In their place is this other band called the Common Men, who are sort of analogue to the Beatles. So there's three of them, Mark, James and Curly. Mark is Mitch Benn doing John Lennon. And I've got to say, actually, having a heck of a lot of fun with it. There's a line in it where Peter Davison, giving it his full Davison, goes, "You don't want to do this, Mark." And Mitch Benn goes, says, "Yeah, I'll do though." And it's just the most perfect flat delivery ever. You've got James, who's Paul McCartney, and then you've got Curly, who's both George and Ringo, because you need to save on the cast, and then the two need amalgamate, right? And it's an incredibly clever idea because it gets you around the issue of both. Not just the the sort of the legal intricacies that we can't represent living people, but also the idea of being allowed to do a story about the Beatles, while also giving yourself the distance and the freedom to follow as much of it as you want, to comment on as much as you want, but also just being free to do other stuff.
Yeah.
And there's always that thing, whenever you do... I was reading very recently John Higgs' book, Love and Let Die, which is about James Bond and the Beatles. And apart from anything else, in that he points out that he gives you basically a watch list of films that will let you follow the entire life of John Lennon. If you watch this film, then this film, then this film, then this film. Right. There's always that question with the Beatles of like which Beatles? Because that's the thing that's so endlessly fascinating about it. I'm a Beatles fan. But the thing that's so fascinating about it is not just how good their music is, but the way in which the fact that they lived through such a transformational time in British and wider popular culture. The fact that they were John Lennon and Paul McCartney and then later George Harrison constantly competing with each other. There was so much change there. There's so many different elements to it across whatever it was, the 9 years or 8 years that they were together as a band and having hits. There's so many rounds, which Beatles story do we do? Do we do the early days in Hamburg? Do we do the first days of Beatlemania? Do we do their time with the Maharishi? Do we do the bigger than Jesus controversy or the Paul is dead conspiracy theory? Do we do John Lennon as a recluse and disillusioned in New York? And this goes, we're stopped it. We'll do all of it.
If Chris Chibnall had chosen to do it, he would have done John Lennon's assassination.
And he'd have had Graham pull the trigger.
I'm cutting that bit. I'm not a Beatles fan. I'm not a Beatles fan. I don't hate their music. I like their music. But I'm not invested in them like you probably are, or like I am in Doctor Who, or I am in other bands and things like that.
Yeah.
They are a part of the cultural zeitgeist that have been there my entire life.
Yeah.
And I have definitely heard 80% of their music. Like, I have done deep dives into all their albums at certain points in my life, but I don't listen to them regularly. I don't have an endless list of facts about them, like I do BBG, for instance. As a fan, you go into this. Is there lots in there for you? Like, is this written by a fan?
Oh, this is Eddie Robson is clearly 100% a Beatles fan. He knows the stuff in there. I mean, all of the things I listed there about the types of Beatles stories to do, they're all in here, down to, even little details down to them all sharing a room above the bar where they're playing in Hamburg at the start of it, right? Even there's a brief scene where the Doctor tries to investigate, well, what's actually happened? Because the Beatles aren't here. The Beatles as a band aren't in this history, but what's happened to the individual people who are in it? So he goes and finds out, George Harrison's an apprentice electrician with his dad. John Lennon's off with a band, but they're a bit rubbish, and he's just a layabout art student. Paul McCartney's training to become a teacher. And Ringo was never in it anyway, so he's probably just a session musician somewhere. And that's absolutely what they all would have ended up doing if they'd not been. So, he knows what he's talking about. There's even, stuff like, so the villain of the piece, a chap called Lenny Kruger, who is their manager, and, of course, we learn is actually the one who's engineering the common men to take the place of the Beatles, because they're all of an alien race who gain power from adoration, as someone says, all you need is love. So they can become the new god. They can become the new gods and conquer everything. And Lenny Kruger is, I think probably it's fair to say, he's sort of a bit of a riff on Alan Klein, who was the Beatles manager in their very last days, who was kind of brought in by John Lennon because he'd got loads of extra money for the Rolling Stones. This was after Brian Epstein had died, but he's also has been in many retellings of it, been somewhat vilified, fairly or unfairly for others to discuss, and probably created as many problems as he did, and certainly played a part in the rift because Paul McCartney's on board, as well as maybe having something of Phil Spector with the whole violent temper element. So, all of that. But you don't need to know that. But if you do, you think, I 100% see what this is.
So I knew probably about 30% of what you just said, but the character still works for me. Because it's a villain with an interesting enough motive, and just it's very subtle. Like, it's a subtle sort of... I think perhaps people would expect Doctor Who to be like, we're doing the Beatles, it's the Beatles versus the Daleks, or the Masters manipulating it, but actually it's a villain you've never heard of. And that makes it all the more sort of just a more interesting... I never knew where this was going to go. And it's not like, look at this twist and this twist. I just didn't know how we were getting from A to B and had a riot while I was doing it. And I think even the way the characters are... Because this story takes place over about 7 years or more. It's like they got the early 60s where, mentioned it's them... The idea is the common men were about one of the English bands who'd gone over to play in Hamburg like the Beatles, all the way through to sort of early 70s where John Lennon is living a reclusive life in New York. You're never at a loss as to which time period you're in because of how he's written, how Eddie Robson has written the characters at all those different points. So, in those early days, you have them, finishing each other's sentences, bouncing off each other the whole time, like they did that patter that was so much a part thing. But then when you have the older Mark, the older John Lennon, slower, ruminating, the slight despondency and everything that's happened. I'm doing a little Putney accent. That's that, and that's just really well observed. But it doesn't, as you say, I don't think it relies on you getting the reference that's referring to John Lennon was. What it just tells you is time has passed. This is that's used to inform the drama in a way that is intelligible to the audience. So let's talk comparisons between The Devil's Chord. Now, the listeners know I wasn't a huge fan of that series. I did really enjoy that episode. I don't think it's perfect, and I think it's very much... It's got big Saturday night energy. Of like a whirlwind of exciting stuff, and you come out the other side going, God, that was fun. So how are they similar? How are they different? Which is a more successful story? Like, they obviously both exist, and they're both doing a sort of similar thing of like removing the Beatles in one way, shape, or form. So do they complement each other, and are they similar, different, blah, blah, blah?
I mean, both contain an unlikely reference to Chris Waits and the Carolers, which is as deep a Doctor Who cut as I think you'll find. But, I mean, I think they do come from... They utilise the Beatles for different points. This is Fanfare for the Common Men is a story about the Beatles.
Yeah.
For all that it deliberately doesn't feature the Beatles, it is absolutely about them. The Devil's Squad is not a story about the Beatles. The
No.
Devil's Squad is a story that features the Beatles.
And it's about the absence of them.
And it's about
But the
music.
absence of music, yeah.
And the power of music more generally. I think they utilise them very differently. And then, touched on, I don't think Devil's Squad actually has much to say about the Beatles at all. I like both stories. I liked Devil's Squad.
I wonder how... I don't think if you did a 45-minute version of this, it would work in that slot in a series of Doctor Who on the television in the way that the Devil's Court does. It's a very visual story. It's a very audible story, obviously, in terms of what the Devil's Court does with a fantastic villain. This is... You have to have that fantastic villain in that version, whereas this version... Okay, we know they're aliens, but essentially it's a story about people or aliens that look like people. It's almost a pedestrian version of this story, even though, as you say, it spans like a decade and has all these big ideas. It
obviously isn't a pure historical, but it is much more interested in history and the actual course of events that occurred than many a Doctor Who story set in the past is.
We talk about the villains. I think I prefer the villain's motive in this, but I wouldn't lose Jinx Monsoon's Maestro from anything. You know, if you've got to pick one, I would pick this as a script, but I would pick her as a villain.
Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, I love. Is it Ryan Sampson who plays Lenny Kruger, who gives a wonderfully demented performance throughout. I love him. I know what you mean. This works as a 4-part audio drama over the better part of 2 hours, where it has the space to tell that story. You know, we've yet to have the definitive Beatles story on film or television. Maybe because, frankly, people are probably waiting for Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney to die before they can tell that.
Quite possibly.
But it is, as you mentioned, it's such a broad story. There's so many things that you would need to cover to tell that story that you do need that additional space. I think if you were to concertina it down into 45 minutes, it would be a heck of a rush.
Yeah.
But it's interesting as well because even in the 10, 11 years since this came out, I was actually thinking, being a bit of a Beatles geek that I am, Eddie Robson almost seems to anticipate a lot of what the Beatles has become in the time since as a sort of cultural text. Yeah. If you all take a moment to vomit on the use of such language. Since then, you've had things like, Now and Then, the single that they went back and built that story out of John Lennon's demo. You've had books like 1, 2, 3, 4 by Craig Brown, which is the best book I've ever read of the Beatles, which is called subtitled The Beatles in Time. Which is that as we move beyond this point where the majority of people who are interested in or like the Beatles have any memory of those events occurring in sequence, for us, the Beatles, all of those different times, all of the guys in the leather jackets playing in Hamburg, the mop tops in their Nehru collars, the Sergeant Pepper guys, the long-haired guys who can barely stay in a room together, they all kind of exist as a sort of kaleidoscope in conversation with each other. They are this sort of kaleidoscopic existence in time, which, and Now and Then is this weird, almost like semi-magical track about the past and the present, and that has seemingly become a part of how the Beatles are identified. And Eddie Robson's doing all of that in a Doctor Who audio drama in 2013.
But you say that, but that's exactly how Doctor Who's become. Yeah. Like, as people who don't have the living memories sort of almost of being there when the Hartnell and the Trout and stuff was there, and you look at all the academic texts or pseudo-academic texts that were released about... We talked about Time 7 coming out around then. Yeah. That was just the start of it. We've had the Sander for books. Yeah. We've had the Black Archive, and all these people with interesting critical takes on Doctor Who that actually weren't necessarily meant by the original creators, even if they were there within the zeitgeist and they couldn't help pull from it. Yeah. And then we now have this show that we look at as a whole, and on the 60th anniversary, you've got the Celestial Toymaker on BBC One, and then you've got Sylvester McCoy on iPlayer sort of trundled out before it. It becomes this huge... It's not the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. It's this huge, weird sort of homogenous, just big ball of stuff that you're constantly picking stuff from. And it's like, I can see why people can continue to compare Doctor Who and the Beatles, even though the Beatles are bigger. As much as Doctor Who fans like to think otherwise. But that's only because they only know them as those guys who are in the chase.
It's one of the few one of the very few predictions of the future that Doctor Who has ever got right, that there would be a Beatles museum in Liverpool.
True, but the Beatles were playing classical music, weren't they?
Yeah, that's true.
And they only know them from their later periods, which I suppose is like 90s pop or something they were expecting.
Can you imagine how awkward it would be now if the Doctor Who production office had got their way and they'd shot a little bit on the set of Top of the Pops with the Beatles made up as old men?
Yeah, old John Lennon. I mean, it would be wonderful, but as you say, it is an awkward moment.
Yeah.
I think we're better off with just that missed timeline there. So, we've talked a lot about the Beatles. How do we like hearing the Fifth Doctor and Nyssa in this world? Because I think, first of all, I think the actors are both bloody loving it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you compare Peter Davis's performance from Necromanteia to this,
100%.
you're like, he loves this script, you can tell. You know, he may even have read it beforehand, who knows. But it's this weird thing where seeing the Fifth Doctor in the 60s, I find peculiarly alien, because you're just not expecting to see him in that world.
Yeah.
Because it's recent history where the First Doctor belongs there. Okay? That's where the First Doctor's from. And nobody else should go there. Okay, Remembrance does it, but it's near the end of the show, right?
Yeah,
but
I really like that. I am in the very very limited sense of Doctor Who tie-in media, a complete anarcho-syndicalist. You know, death to all systems and tyrants who wish to bring them in. I hate it when we get a new Big Finish series where it's Tom Baker has to go back to 1976.
Yeah.
That's when Tom Baker's from. I find that so no, this is the USP of Doctor Who, is he can be in 2015.
Yeah.
He can be in 1962. Don't do that. Have them, jumble them up. And by that I don't just mean have Jackie Tyler meet the Protons.
Yeah.
I mean you can have the Fifth Doctor in.
Eddie Robson wrote this and wrote The Condemned, which is the Sixth Doctor and Charlie in a tower block in, I don't know,
2008.
2008, that's it, yeah. And it's like, there is no point where you're like, oh, well, they shouldn't be here. It's just Doctor Who, your Doctor Who brain going, this doesn't compute, but actually, you can go to Skaro, but you can't go to 2015 or whatever.
I think there are some people involved in making Doctor Who sometimes miss that the central character is a time traveller.
Nyssa and the Fifth Doctor, they're separated for a lot of the story.
Yeah.
Are we happy with their involvements within it? Does it give them enough to do? Because it's quite an overwhelming concept to sort of be handed as a Doctor in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a busy story with a heck of a lot going on, and I think they both get a fairly good shake of it. I think Pete Davidson's the Fifth Doctor brings. Often we think of the Doctors and the younger Doctors, especially as these sort of explosions of energy, as these very active things. What Pete Davidson's Fifth Doctor actually brings is often a kind of stillness in the middle of for all that he's getting a bit, fretted. You don't need to do this. He's a very still character around whom everything seems to coalesce and the storm moves, and I think that works really well here, especially in a story that is so big and so colourful and so excited by its ideas. Having a very grounded character sense of it, he gets lots to do. He navigates us very, very neatly through it. I think Nyssa gets a lot of fun to do. Sarah Sutton. I think you can tell that this is a script written by a heterosexual writer of a certain age who remembers that Sarah Sutton was very, very pretty in the early 80s. And, as a large part of this is Corky, the Ringo George character, basically wanting to get off with her.
Yeah, but and there's a slight uncomfortable nature to it, but it's a controlled uncomfortableness where Nyssa is very much the character in control in a way that's in Nekromanteia.
100%. She is completely in control. Nothing is going to happen. This guy fancies her, and that's nice, and that's lovely.
It's a running joke.
And it's a running joke. It is entirely comfortable and appropriate.
Yeah,
I 100% agree.
Obviously, music is an important part of this, and they've composed some original music. How do we feel about the music listener?
It's actually really
surprisingly so.
Surprisingly good.
Because you would expect it to be a real shit knockoff.
Oh yeah, you go. We've asked the sound designer to do some Beatles.
Yeah, and he's done it all on synths.
That's all in synths. But actually, I mean, I don't know you'd go away and listen to any of it. But
no, but
in the course of the story, it actually works really well, and it's really quite convincing at times.
It's that thing of, if you played this, and this is some band from the same time as the Beatles that you haven't heard of, they weren't as big as the Beatles for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
You go, oh yeah, okay, I completely get that. Like, I love lots of 80s music, and every now and then someone will go, have you heard this band? they've got like one good album. It's good, but you can absolutely tell why they were not the next Smiths or Depeche Mode. It's just like it's just not quite honed enough, and I think this does a good job of sort of replicating the era and going, this is what a lot of rip-off Beatles bands at the time sounded like.
Yeah, and what's so clever about this conceit is that it 100% allows the story to have its cake and eat it, because they literally have characters say, oh well, the Common Men were a band in quote unquote real history, the real timeline, but they weren't as good as the Beatles. I think there's a thing that they peaked at number 2.
Yeah.
And so you go, oh yeah, well, as you say, that's another Mersey beat band who no one really remembers.
Exactly, and so you're not there left going, fuck, I'm the Big Finish sound designer and I have to create a Beatles song. Which nobody needs that in their life.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the story from when David Bowie was in Extras and got a note from Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant where they wrote some lyrics for a song, and they said to him, oh, just make it a bit Life on Mars, and he replied going, oh yeah, I'll just write another Life on Mars for them.
So we talked before about how Nekromanteia is part of that 40th anniversary year of Doctor Who, but it's not meant as a celebration. But certainly, we take an anniversary year and we go, well, this is everything you offered us.
100%. Yeah.
And perhaps Nekromanteia wasn't the most successful version of that. How good of a... Again, this isn't the light at the end.
No.
But how good of a celebration of Doctor Who's history is this? Because it's part of a trilogy, 1963, of which we get the Countermeasures one, and what's the other one?
The Space Race.
The Space Race, well, can't remember that still, but anyway.
Yeah.
Is it a good celebration of 50 years of Doctor Who?
Yeah, I think it was a bit like how for the 40th anniversary now, when people talk about the Big Finish celebration of the 40th anniversary, the thing they really praise is the Villains trilogy.
Yeah.
Which was the 3 monthly releases leading up to Zagreus. And similarly, I think for the 50th anniversary, the 1963 trilogy, actually a lot better. Maybe there was less pressure on it. It was just an interesting conceit.
Yeah.
A lot more rewarding. It's largely a lot better than Light at the End.
It feels like it represents the cultural impact of both Doctor Who and the things around it. And I've used the word zeitgeist a few times, but I'm going to use it again. But it just feels like it celebrates the 60s-ness of the origin of Doctor Who without having to have the Doctor meet Sidney Newman.
100%. And it kind of points to the idea that, Doctor Who can fall into the... And sometimes for good, sometimes bad, but the sort of horrible histories, idea of history that, this is what that period was like. I quite like that the 1963 trilogy deliberately sort of challenged that in and of itself and went, well, look, we're going to set 3 stories in the same month, November 1963, and they're going to be completely different, but they're all going to be recognisable pop culture versions of that era. So we're going to have the Beatles, we're going to have the Space Race, we're going to have a Cold War thriller.
Yeah.
And all 3 of them are great. And in the same way that just saying we're going to look at 3 of the biggest villains in Doctor Who and tell character pieces about them, I think it's great. And I think the reason it's a great celebration of Doctor Who is because it's a really good exploitation of the format, rather than going, we're going to have all of the Doctors that we can get to sign a contract running around corridors.
Absolutely. Which is also is a valid version of the Doctor Who anniversary story. Whether you love them, loathe them, or think they're okay, but this is far more interesting. And truthfully, if for the 60th anniversary, which they didn't ultimately, they did their own thing. If they'd said, we're going to do something like this on television in a different way, I would be like, okay, what an interesting way to celebrate an anniversary. As it was, well, I'll throw myself under the bus outside. Is there much more you want to say on Fanfare for the Common Men?
I mean, the only other thing is that as a Beatles fan, one of the things I really appreciate about this was the thought that it was celebrating the Beatles, and all that it's written by somebody who's a huge fan. It also avoided any temptation to make the Beatles quote unquote important in some way, to suggest that they're fantastic. But the Doctor has a line where he says, the problem with people who try to engineer history is they don't appreciate the wonder of sheer happenstance. And that's what's fantastic about the Beatles, is you ended up with Paul McCartney and John Lennon, 2 people who individually would have been Eric Clapton's, right? They would have been well-remembered singer-songwriters, so they got the opportunity, but they bounced off each other for the better part of a decade and produced more and more stuff at exactly the right time. And compare it to, say, Yesterday, which just says, oh, do you know what? If you were the person who wrote who wrote Paperback Writer today, Dylan, you'd be every bit as famous. Like, no, that's not how it works.
No.
They were fantastic, but you don't have to make them into some kind of, ironically, godlike beings who somehow are inexplicable outside of their context.
Absolutely. It's sort of going right cultural situation, right time within the music industry, lots of people making a similar sort of music, but this particular combination just happens to get it. But actually there's a slightly different combination that also works within that timeline, and it's just like, as you say, it's not making them gods, which I think is a very clever thing to do, which the Devil's Chord makes them, quite rightfully, a very important missing bit of history, but it never explores their impact in any way, shape or form.
Yeah.
Because the Devil's Chord would work if you did it with
Jerry and the Pacemakers.
Slade, whoever it is. No, but every sort of 5 years, there's a new big band that lasts forever, and they could have picked any of those from history. I can't think of any of them right now because I'm an idiot.
Tears for Fears.
Tears for Fears, exactly. Future Dylan will come in and drop in Radiohead or whatever it is. So, if we've got nothing left to say, is it a clanger, a banger, or an average meander?
Oh, it is a shake it up, baby, twist and shout, absolute banger. This might actually be one of my favourite big finishes.
I have to agree. It's an absolute banger. I loved revisiting it. It is one that I will listen to again.
Yeah.
I remember enjoying it when it came out, but perhaps didn't like it as much as I do now. But I listened to this and I was like, this is everything I want from a Doctor Who story.
Yeah.
Just doing something really interesting, really fun. Takes its subject matter seriously, but can have an exciting and fun time with it. I was blown away, and it doesn't involve, when I say this, we're all too used now for the blown away being big plot twists and big reveals.
Yeah.
It was just none of that. It was just a good story, having fun with popular culture, so it bangs very hard.
Too hot for TV.
There we are. We've got through 2 Peter Davison stories. Somebody who I class as one of my least favourite Doctors. And I both enjoyed them in different ways. One was better than the other. How do you feel coming out of that? Like, is Davison a Doctor that you're normally drawn to? Do you feel you've got a better understanding of him? And do you think you love him more at Big Finish? Where are you at with Davo in general?
I mean, like you, I have. If you were to ask me to rank my Doctors, which no one ever does, but obviously I have done mentally many times.
All Doctor Who fans do that, and no one ever asks.
What were you doing in Zombie Apocalypse? Who were your favourite Doctor Who's? I wouldn't have put him that high up, but actually, and especially with Fanfare for the Common Men, I am beginning as I mature. I am as I get older, as I head towards middle age. I'm beginning to appreciate the Peter Davison Doctor more. The fact that he's clearly a very good actor. Let's face it. But also that stillness that he brings to the Doctor. He has that same, similar to what Matt Smith did years later, of playing against his youth. Obviously, he's not that youthful now, but the youthfulness of his Doctor, of just being the calm centre of the storm in all of it. And it's a much quieter performance, I think, than any other Doctor Who. And I don't think he gets enough praise for really reinventing what Doctor Who could be. If you look at the 4 who came before him, and then you got that performance.
And it's a lot funnier than I think people give it credit for, both in the TV series and here. It's not a Tom Baker laugh or a Matt Smith laugh, but he's very cynical and very dry. And he has this sort of acerbic wit that you're like, okay, this guy's a lot funnier than I thought he was when I was 10 or 17 or whatever. It's just, as you say, it's a slightly different take that takes a little time to get used to. And after getting 2 different versions of it, I came away going, I need some more Davison Big Finish in my life.
Yeah, 100%. There is that thing that there was a meme that was doing the rounds on social media which said, plotted how much you know about music versus how much you like the Beatles. And it said people who know a little bit about music think the Beatles are great. People who know quite a lot about music think the Beatles are overrated. People who know a lot about music go, oh no, actually the Beatles are fucking great. And I think it's sort of the same with Davison.
Excellent.
But in Doctor Who terms, not music.
Yeah, of course.
I loved the theme tune to Buttermoon as much as anyone else.
Yeah, exactly. It's my childhood right there. So if people want to find you on the internet, where can they find you?
They can find me occasionally on X, Twitter, as well as at call_B_Kenneth, or I'm on Blue Sky at michael.mills, or you can hear me semi-regularly on, I'm one of the few people that are on Hamster with a Blunt Penknife, where you can hear me semi-regularly on the Hamster Book Club, chatting about Doctor Who books at length with Joe Ford.
Excellent, and it's wonderful to hear you guys chat about Doctor Who books that I'm never going to read, and you take the ones that I cover in 20 minutes and do 5 hours on them, so, bravo. No, they're a wonderful listen, so you should all go and search them. I can't imagine there's anybody here that doesn't listen to Hamster, but if there isn't, if there is, shame on you.
Next time, I'll be joined by Ian Winterton, and we'll be looking at 2 Zygon-based BBV releases. First, it's the audio The Barnacle Baby. Then, we've been here once before, but we're going there again with a very different take. We're doing Zygon, When Being You Just Isn't Enough.
But until next time, I've been Dylan.
And I've been Michael.
And this has been Doctor Who, Too Hot for TV.
Too hot for TV.
Oh, this is a lot smaller when it's not on the screen. Oh, fuck.
Don't panic. Shit. It's alright.
How do I zoom in?
You can edit.